the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
Picture the entire global economy as like this intricate, sprawling nervous system.
Right, it's massive.
Yeah, and we like to think of international trade as this unstoppable force, right? Just a massive web of ocean freighters bringing you everything from, your smartphone components to the groceries in your fridge.
Exactly. We take it totally for granted.
We really do.
Yeah.
But if you pull up a map and zoom in, you notice something actually terrifying about that system.
Oh, absolutely.
The entire global machine is highly dependent on, just a handful of incredibly fragile, impossibly narrow geographic bottlenecks.
Yeah, it is a profound structural vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have the most advanced logistics networks on Earth, but they all still have to physically float through these tiny blue veins on the map.
Which brings us to the most critical vein of them all, the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, yeah, the big one.
We are taking you straight there today because right now a high-stakes standoff is playing out in that exact waterway. It's a geopolitical flashpoint that has a direct, immediate pipeline to your daily life.
Literally dictating what you will pay at the gas pump tomorrow morning.
Exactly. So the stakes could not be higher.
No, I mean, we are looking at trapped civilian ships, a suffocating economic blockade, and a highly complex, multi-stage peace proposal that was just placed on the negotiation table.
So let's lay out the mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking a pretty comprehensive report on this U.S.-Iran standoff, and it was published by Red State on May 3, 2026.
Right.
Now, before we dive into the details, we really need to set some ground rules for how we are looking at this source. Red State is a politically aligned publication.
Yes, it is.
So as your guides today, we want to be crystal clear. We are not taking sides here.
Not at all.
And we are not endorsing the politics, the viewpoints, or, the rhetoric contained in the article. Our sole mission is to act as impartial guides for you.
We're basically just looking at the mechanics of it.
Exactly. We are taking the specific claims, the diplomatic frameworks, and the physical events described in the text, and we're putting them under a microscope so you can understand the board and the pieces in play.
That neutrality is super crucial because, the diplomatic levers described in this report are fascinating to map out.
Yeah, they really are.
We're going to look at the mechanical logic driving both sides.
Right.
And there are basically two primary threads running in parallel here.
Okay, lay them out for us.
First, Iran has proposed this massive three-stage framework to end the conflict.
Right.
And second, because that overarching framework was literally just rejected, the U.S. is launching a sudden maritime operation called Project Freedom to deal with the immediate chaos in the water.
Project Freedom. Okay, so to understand the peace proposal, I think we have to look at the catalyst first.
Makes sense.
Why is Iran suddenly bringing a multi-stage diplomatic framework to the table now?
Well, the report points to a massive economic chokehold.
Right. President Trump has imposed a severe blockade on shipping in and out of Iranian ports.
Yeah, and the text specifically notes this blockade is making the regime incredibly nervous because, it's working.
Let's break down the mechanics of a modern blockade for a second, because I feel like people picture, a literal wall of warships bumper to bumper.
Right, like old pirate movies or something.
Exactly. But it's not really like that, is it?
No, not at all. A modern blockade functions heavily through economics and insurance.
Insurance.
Yeah. If the U.S. military declares an area restricted and begins enforcing it, global maritime insurance companies will simply refuse to underwrite any commercial vessel trying to enter an Iranian port.
Oh, wow. So it's a paperwork thing.
Basically, yeah.
Well.
Without insurance, the massive global shipping conglomerates simply won't sail. The physical chokehold actually creates an invisible financial chokehold.
That is wild.
And that is the exact leverage forcing Iran to draft stage one of this new proposal.
Okay, so let's get into stage one. It seems entirely focused on the immediate bleeding.
Yeah, it's all about stopping the current crisis.
The goal laid out in the report is to turn the current shaky ceasefire into an official, formalized end to the war within 30 days.
Right.
And to police this, they want to set up this international reference body paired with a mutual commitment between the U.S. and Iran not to launch attacks against each other.
Which, 30 days is an incredibly aggressive timeline in diplomatic terms.
Yeah, it seems almost impossible.
But the most revealing part of Stage 1 is the physical negotiation over the Strait of Hormuz itself. The waterway is currently paralyzed, and that's largely due to naval mines.
Right. Let's pause on the mines for a second. When you drop explosives into a channel that narrow, you aren't just trying to blow up an enemy ship.
No, you're shutting down the entire highway.
Exactly. The strait is only about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point.
Which sounds like a lot, but it's really not.
Not at all. When you factor in the deep water shipping lanes required for these massive supertankers, vessels that take miles just to come to a complete stop, the navigable space is incredibly tight.
It's basically a needle.
Right. So Iran is demanding the primary responsibility for clearing these mines out of those lanes.
Though the text does note they are explicitly open to U.S. assistance in that clearing process.
True, but the catch is the reciprocity. Iran clears the mines and gradually reopens the strait, but only in exchange for a proportional, step-by-step lifting of the U.S. blockade on their ports.
Like I clear one lane, you open one port.
Exactly.
That proportional exchange is classic game theory. Trust between these two nations is essentially non-existent.
Right, nobody wants to go first.
Exactly. Neither side is willing to forfeit their primary leverage first. The U.S. holds the blockade, Iran holds the strait closure. So they have to engage in this symmetrical de-escalation.
Like a highly choreographed dance.
It really is. It requires an intense mirrored choreography where every physical action has to be met with an equal concession.
Okay, I am tracking with the symmetry, but I have a major hang-up on another detail in Stage 1.
What's that?
The article mentions Iran included a demand for a compensation clause. And the specific wording is that this compensation would be phrased, quote, in a new and creative way.
Yes, the creative compensation.
Wait. You are trying to orchestrate this incredibly delicate mine-by-mine de-escalation, but you are also asking for financial compensation right out of the gate.
It does seem pretty bold.
And you are calling it creative. How does anyone sign off on a vague demand for money while the strait is still rigged with explosives?
Well, your skepticism hits on the exact strategic vulnerability of Stage 1.
So it's intentional.
Oh, absolutely. In high-level diplomacy, ambiguity is almost always intentional. Using a phrase like creative compensation is a deliberate tactic to park a highly contentious issue.
Oh, I see.
By keeping it vague, negotiators can avoid walking away from the table on day one. They are essentially leaving a blank check to fight over later.
So they are actively delaying the hard part?
Fundamentally, yes. Stage 1 is just a mechanical pause.
Okay.
It stops the physical violence, clears the shipping lanes, and formalizes the ceasefire. But it deliberately ignores the geopolitical elephant in the room.
Which perfectly explains why Stage 1 feels incomplete. If creative compensation is just a way to kick the can down the road, what is the actual roadblock they are avoiding?
And that brings us to the machinery sitting in the desert.
Right. Stage 2 of the proposal. This tackles the absolute core of the conflict, which is Iran's nuclear program.
This is where the physical reality of the situation clashes violently with the diplomatic desires.
The proposal from Iran offers a complete freeze on uranium enrichment activity for up to 15 years.
Yes.
Okay, so a 15-year freeze sounds pretty significant on the surface. But let's look at what happens after the clock runs out.
That's the kicker.
The text states that post 15 years, Iran would be permitted to resume enriching uranium, specifically at a low civilian grade level of 3.6%.
We really need to explain the physics of that 3.6% figure because it is the absolute linchpin of the entire nuclear debate.
Go for it.
So when you mine natural uranium out of the ground, it contains less than 1% of the specific isotope needed for nuclear reactions.
Basically useless in that state.
Right. To make it useful, you have to spin it in massive centrifuges to filter out the useless material and concentrate that active isotope.
It's almost like a highly complex molecular water purifier.
That's a great way to visualize it. Now, 3.6% is the threshold generally required to power a civilian nuclear energy reactor.
Okay, and what about weapons?
Weapons-grade uranium requires enrichment closer to 90%.
3.6 to 90, that sounds like a massive gap.
To the average person, it looks huge. But in the physics of uranium enrichment, the hardest, most energy-intensive part of the entire process is just getting from natural ore up to that 3.6% mark.
Really?
Yes. Once you have a stockpile of 3.6% uranium, you have completed the vast majority of the physical work required to reach 90%.
So hitting 3.6% isn't starting a marathon, it is starting a marathon at mile 20.
That is the exact mathematical reality, which is why the next clause in Iran's proposal is so vital.
The zero stockpiling.
Yes. They offer to resume that 3.6% enrichment under a strict rule of zero stockpiling. They are proposing a system where they can enrich the material for civilian power, but they are not permitted to maintain an inventory of it.
I am really struggling to see the logistics of that.
It's tough to picture.
I mean, if you are constantly spinning centrifuges to create nuclear fuel, but you aren't allowed to keep it, where does it go?
Yeah.
Do they just load highly radioactive material onto a truck every Tuesday?
Well, the report mentions that the existing stockpile of highly enriched uranium could be transferred completely outside the country or diluted down to a safer level.
Okay, but managing a continuous zero stockpile rule going forward seems like a logistical nightmare to enforce.
Enforcing it is historically one of the most complex jobs for international inspectors.
Yeah.
But the real friction point, the absolute red line for Iran in Stage 2, is their physical infrastructure.
The facilities themselves.
Exactly. Iran states an absolute refusal to dismantle their nuclear facilities or destroy their centrifuges.
They won't touch the buildings.
Right. They are willing to freeze operations, but the buildings, the wiring, the spinning machines, they all stay perfectly intact. And in exchange, they demand a guaranteed mechanism to completely remove all economic sanctions.
Talk to me about the difference between freezing a facility and actually dismantling it.
It's a huge difference.
Because if the machines are just sitting there, fully operational, with the lights turned off, can't they just flip the breaker back on the moment those 15 years are up?
Yes.
Or, next week, if they get mad and walk away from the treaty.
This concept is known in intelligence circles as breakout time.
Breakout time, okay.
It's the amount of time it would theoretically take a nation to produce enough material for a weapon if they sprinted for it.
Right.
When you physically dismantle a nuclear facility by tearing out the centrifuges and pouring concrete into the plumbing, the breakout time extends to years. Rebuilding takes massive industrial effort.
But if the facility is just frozen...
Then the breakout time collapses to a matter of weeks, maybe months. The capability is merely dormant. This is precisely why the article's author, and reportedly President Trump, view the entire framework as too sketchy.
Because the U.S. gives up everything permanent for something temporary.
Exactly. The U.S. is being asked to permanently dismantle its primary leverage, the crushing economic sanctions, in exchange for a temporary behavioral pause from Iran, while Iran keeps its most dangerous physical leverage fully intact.
That tension explodes into full view when you read Stage 3 of their proposal.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this is Iran's ultimate endgame. Stage 3 proposes opening a broad strategic dialogue with Arab states to build a brand new shared security system encompassing the entire Middle East.
The ambition of that final stage is staggering. Iran is essentially pitching a complete reordering of Middle Eastern geopolitics.
Right, moving toward a self-contained, regionally managed security apparatus.
Exactly.
But look at the staggering contradiction here. They want to hold hands with their historical adversaries and build an integrated regional security alliance.
Right.
But they are demanding the right to keep their fully intact nuclear infrastructure sitting in the desert while they do it.
It doesn't make sense.
It's like asking your neighbors to form a neighborhood watch, but refusing to dismantle the artillery cannon you have pointed at the street.
That is a perfect analogy. The strategic dissonance is impossible to ignore, and it is the primary reason the framework collapsed.
Yeah, the report states that on Sunday, President Trump officially rejected this entire three-stage proposal,
Calling it not acceptable and demanding a better offer.
which violently yanks us back from the high-level diplomatic chess game and drops us right back into the water.
Where things are still very much on fire.
Right, because while these proposals are being debated and rejected, the physical crisis in the Strait of Hormuz is still active.
The overarching deal failed on Sunday. Monday morning, the ships are still trapped.
Iran is still disrupting shipping in the waterway, and this isn't just an inconvenience for a few shipping magnates.
No, the disruptions ripple outward instantaneously. The report points out that neutral countries are taking the hit, and when neutral shipping is bottlenecked, global supply chains panic.
That is where the local gas pump comes back into the story. A fifth of the world's oil is suddenly struggling to find an exit ramp.
It's a massive deal.
So, how is the U.S. dealing with the innocent ships caught in the crossfire? The article details the launch of a new maritime operation kicking off Monday morning, Middle East time.
Project Freedom.
Project Freedom.
And the focus of Project Freedom is incredibly narrow. It is designed strictly to address the commercial vessels that are currently locked up in the restricted zones.
Okay.
President Trump noted that these ships belong to countries all over the world, nations that have absolutely nothing to do with the underlying geopolitical dispute.
They are essentially innocent commuters trapped on a bridge because two people are having a standoff in the middle of traffic.
Exactly.
And the situation on those ships is deteriorating rapidly. This is a crucial logistical detail. Ships aren't just floating metal boxes.
Right, there are people on board.
The report highlights that these vessels are running dangerously low on food and sanitary supplies.
People often forget the human element of global logistics. A massive supertanker might have a crew of 20 to 30 sailors.
And they can't just run to the grocery store.
Right. Their provisions are calculated for the duration of the voyage, plus a small safety margin.
Makes sense.
When a geopolitical crisis suddenly forces them to drop anchor indefinitely, keeping that crew fed, hydrated, and safe from disease becomes a massive humanitarian crisis within days.
And that humanitarian angle is exactly how Trump framed Project Freedom. He called it a humanitarian gesture for the U.S., for the Middle East, and he specifically added in particular the country of Iran.
Interesting framing.
He also made a point to mention that his representatives are currently having very positive discussions with Iran.
Let's analyze the rhetoric there because it is deeply calculated.
Oh, for sure.
By heavily emphasizing the humanitarian nature of the escort and publicly praising back-channel discussions, the administration is attempting to manage the optics of a military maneuver.
Right.
They want to move naval assets into a contested zone without it being perceived as an act of war.
It is a fascinating dual approach. Let me give you an analogy for what Project Freedom actually is.
Let's hear it.
The U.S. isn't trying to clear the traffic jam by resolving the standoff. They are essentially using their military to open a VIP bypass lane on the clogged highway. They are putting armed guards around the innocent commuters and escorting them out the side door, getting them off the board completely. But they are doing this while delivering a massive ultimatum.
The threat attached to the operation leaves absolutely no room for interpretation.
No, Trump warned that if anyone interferes with this humanitarian process, it will be dealt with forcefully.
Forcefully.
The article itself uses the word pounded to describe what will happen to anyone who attacks these escorted ships. And a crucial detail, the U.S. stated these civilian ships will not be returning to the area until it is completely safe for navigation.
If you look at the underlying architecture of Project Freedom, it is a brilliant tactical maneuver.
How so?
Iran's primary physical leverage in this entire standoff is their ability to hold the global economy hostage by threatening neutral shipping.
Right.
By bringing in the U.S. Navy to safely escort those specific neutral ships out of the danger zone, the U.S. is surgically extracting Iran's hostages.
Ah, I see. They relieve the pressure from all the neutral countries who are screaming at them to do something.
Exactly.
But they do it without lifting a single restriction of the economic blockade on Iranian ports.
They bypass the maritime leverage entirely. They are neutralizing the chaos in the water while keeping the economic chokehold firmly in place. It isolates the pain of the standoff strictly to the primary actors.
So bringing all of these complex threads together, what are you actually witnessing in this report?
A lot of moving parts.
You are watching an incredible, real-time, high-wire act of modern geopolitics. We are seeing maximum economic pressure through a suffocating port blockade, and we are seeing direct military intervention through the Project Freedom escorts.
Simultaneously.
Right. Happening concurrently, literally in the same breath as high-stakes, back-channel negotiations over 15-year nuclear enrichment freezes and the lifting of global sanctions.
It really shatters the illusion that diplomacy and physical conflict happen in separate rooms.
Totally.
They are deeply intertwined, constantly reacting to the physical realities on the ground and in the water.
Right. The economic blockade forced Iran to draft the peace proposal.
And the rejection of that proposal forced the U.S. to launch the maritime escorts.
Every single action is a calculated attempt to shift the balance of power just a fraction of an inch before the negotiators sit down again.
That's the game.
And the reason this matters to you, sitting at home or driving in your car, is that these massive, abstract geopolitical concepts have a physical pipeline to your wallet.
Yep, the gas pump.
When naval mines restrict a 21-mile-wide channel of water halfway across the globe, the reverberations hit the global economy the very same day.
Instantly.
Trade stability, the cost of imported goods, the price of gasoline, they are all held hostage by these fragile geographic bottlenecks.
The physical realities of a map will always dictate the economic realities of your daily life.
Always. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a provocative thought.
Okay.
Something that builds directly on the ultimate endgame Iran proposed in their framework. Remember stage 3.
The shared security system.
Right. Iran's stated ambition is to build a new shared security system with Arab states, allowing the Middle East to manage its own regional security.
Which would be a profound architectural shift in global power dynamics.
Exactly. So imagine a scenario where the 15-year nuclear freeze actually holds. The physical facilities aren't dismantled, but they remain dormant. The U.S. completely lifts the economic sanctions. What happens to the balance of global power when the Middle East's historical adversaries actually begin managing their own shared security system without relying on an outside referee like the United States?
Man, it challenges a half-century of foreign policy assumptions.
It really does.
If regional powers collectively control the most critical economic bottlenecks on Earth, without external oversight, who actually holds the leverage over global trade?
It is a massive question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those big questions, keep reading the primary sources critically, and always remember just how deeply connected your local gas pump is to a narrow strip of water halfway across the world. We will see you next time.
Gracias por escuchar La Voz de Rey Dog. Suscríbete y hasta la próxima.